Welcome back to Living with a Classic. We're down here in the storage, but I don't think I want to call it storage anymore. I think I'm just call it the garage because I'm just going to keep cars down here. We got the XJ12 sitting over here, and in the last video on this car, we solved a low-speed stumble, which was just one of the little throttle rods in the back had gotten bent because I think I got caught up on it when I replaced the battery. So bent that back to 90 degrees. And that is fixed. It's running very nicely. However, I was driving a little bit more after the previous video and I noticed there's something is not quite right. It doesn't feel that peppy as it should. And I also noticed a slight misfire if it revs freely very nicely, but if I hold the throttle open at a little bit higher RPM, not like higher, but 2000 RPM, something like that, is definitely missing. It's losing cylinders on both sides. So initially I started thinking, this must be ignition related. This must be the famous Opus system. I have re-Opus fitted, which shouldn't have any issues. However, the man who made that system passed away a couple of years ago, or many years ago now. So you can't really ask him about troubleshooting it. So just gotta work with as long as you have. There is another upgrade that you can do, which is an SMG Barrett system, but it's pretty expensive. And if everything else was working fine, then I'm not gonna do that in case I have to. I may do that on my XJS, but it's something like $900 when it's all shipped to my house. So it's quite a lot of money. So I started going through just all the sensors and everything, and then I figured something out. So let me show you what I think it is, and we'll try and figure out if that is the issue in this video, and hopefully by the end of this video it will be running perfectly. If you look closely, you will see a clue. I think it has to do with fuel pressure. So I think it's running lean, because that's really what it feels like. Because remember I talked about before, you have the little board in here and it gives extra pulses to the injectors, just like a accelerated pump would on a carburetor. So that's why if I rev it cleanly, it revs really well. But if I rev it up and hold it, after a second or so, it will start stumbling and shaking, and we're losing cylinders. So I went through the whole ignition system. I put a different coil in. I just had a spare coil laying around. I saw if it was different when it was hot or cold. I measured all the sensors. However, I did one thing which I'll demonstrate in a little bit. When it was running and when it was hot, I propped up the throttle just with a screwdriver and it was missing terribly. Then I pulled that connector over there, the connector for the intake air temperature sensor, so that's disconnected. Because if that is disconnected or open circuit, it will increase fueling by about 10%. So I thought if it runs worse, it's too rich, or runs correctly and there's not really an issue. If it runs better, there's an issue. Pull that and it immediately stopped misfiring. It was running great. It was revving even better, and it just sounded amazing. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe it's the sensor. Measure that, no issue with that. And then I thought, you know what, it may be fuel pressure. Even though we measured it in the previous video, I thought maybe that's an issue. So I bought another, just another pressure gauge, or just a gauge. And I used my contraption I made before, set it up, and you know what? It seems to be a little bit too low. One thing that I also did before I even got the gauge was I just turned up the fuel pressure. I went a half a turn on both of them, just without a gauge, and it was running better. So that's what we're going to do now. I have set these back to what they were before, just half a turn back. Let's fire this thing up, see what the pressure is. It's completely cold now. It runs pretty okay when cold, but I think it's just because it's getting a lot of enrichment. But let's just see what the pressure is, and then let's set it once more. And I think this gauge seems to be more correct than my other one. Let's just fire it up and see what the pressure is. And you see that is too low. Should be around 2 to 2.1 bar, and we're at 1.7. So that is really not good at all. Let me show you how I think I figured this out. So, show you, see if I can do this one-handed. It's very hard to tell now because it's cold, but it is missing a little bit on each cylinder, and then if I pull this, it should increase these RPM. See that? It goes up and it smooths out. So that's how I noticed it. Because when it's hot, it would misfire. And you see it goes down again. And I think if we go back here, you'll notice that it's not fully warmed up. So, but when it's warm, it would definitely misfire. So you see, it rubs better and more cleanly with that removed. And we see that the fuel pressure is way too low. So let's turn it off and let's actually set it one more time. Once again, I have a detailed video on this, but I'll just show you guys. I clamp the fuel hose from that fuel pressure regulator. So then this is the only one working. Then we're going to start it up. We'll check what the fuel pressure is. We'll set this one to 2 bar or about 29 PSI. Set the other one at the same, and then we'll check what the pressure is with both of them working. Let me fire it up. Okay, I'm going to rev it once. And we're about 1.7 bar. So, can't remember. I think it's turning it in to turn up the fuel pressure. Yeah, seems to be that way. We are at, gauge is fluctuating quite a bit, but we're about 2 right there. Just turn it up a hair. All I'm doing there is holding it at a higher RPM, and I see that the fuel pressure just goes down a tiny bit then. To about 1.9, so let's see. That's about 2.1. Now I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I think we have a correct fuel pressure now. So I think something just happened to my gauge because I don't remember it running like this before. That's why I was checking a lot of other things I replaced. Like I've done some things in the distributor and some other things, but all that seems to be fine. But I think when I made that video a couple of years ago showing how to set fuel pressure, I think my gauge was broken then. I think it was fine when I set it myself years before that. Then something happened and then I set it too low because I remember it being high in that video and I turned it down, which I mean I should have thought about that maybe something happened with the gauge, but that's the way it is. Now this seems to be good. And what I've done, just double check things, I've actually ordered another gauge. This is just a cheap one I could get locally. It's not specifically for fuel pressure. I think it says it can handle oil and stuff and it seems to be working fine, but I have ordered like a racing style fuel pressure tester or gauge that you can actually mount permanently. So I may actually do that because I don't use one of the cold start injectors. It's blocked off because it was leaking and not shutting off. So I'm only using one. That's why when this thing cold starts, it always starts on one bank first and then the other one fires right away. So I may put a permanent gauge in there, not really sure, but at least now I think it is running a lot better. I'm gonna let everything cool down a little bit so I can disconnect the gauge and all of that. And then the next couple days, we'll go for a drive and see if it's better. I think it should be. Seems like it's running a lot better now. One more thing I need to do is adjust the ECU. You can adjust the idle on a Digitronic ECU. That's the only thing you can adjust. The idle mixture, basically. So I have turned it down with a screwdriver to 2 clicks. The reason it's not mounted up there is while troubleshooting all of this, I just grabbed a spare ECU and see if that was the issue. This ECU works really well, except that it is a little rich at idle, so there's something wrong with the idle circuit in it. Potentiometer here, I think that thing just needs to be replaced or something, but it's working fine otherwise. So the car ran the same, just a little bit richer at idle, but it, the higher RPMs was exactly the same on that ECU. But I thought it was a good thing just to swap things out. So I set this 2 clicks leaner. Let's see if that's better, because when I was testing it now a little bit, I noticed that if I revved it up and held it up, it was fine. But if I just took it up slowly, it would miss a little bit. And that's because it's loading up the plugs a little bit. Let's just see if it's any better. It's very, very smooth. Yeah, and it picks up right away. Oh, it's running beautifully. This is how I remember this thing runs. This V12 in this car, it runs amazing. It's one of the best running V12s I've ever experienced. It's just, it's really, really good. Might actually even be able to turn it down a click or 2 more, but I think this is good enough for now. While this thing is cooling off and I can, disconnect the gauge, I have noticed one thing: the pressure is not falling. It falls a little bit right when the pump goes off. I mean, it goes to maybe about, let me see, 1.8 bar or something. So it just falls a tiny bit and then it stays there for a long time. If it sits all the way overnight, it will gradually fall down, and that is not uncommon. That's not an injector leak. That's probably the return in the pump or something like that. So that seems to be working well. But while I wait for it to cool down fully so I can reconnect everything, I'm going to take the tack out. It's just sitting under loosely. When we tried it in the previous video, I think there's something going on with it. And we'll take it up and take that apart. See, that looks fine inside. It may just be a bad connection or something like that. I had an issue like that with the XJ6 tack a while back. It was just a bad solder joint, and fixed it, and now it's been fine. One other thing, got these different shirts. This is my XJ40 one I offer a design. I have a V12 firing order. I got various mugs and stickers and thing in my merch store. So if you want to support the channel and have some interesting, unique clothing, you can go check out my merch store and buy something there. All the profits and everything go back into the channel so I can make better videos for you guys. But also, if you check out the merch store and there's something that you're missing that you'd really like to have, just leave a comment and I'll do my best to try and make that happen. But I'll take the tack out, and then a little bit later today, we'll have a look at that. It's almost a week later, and I've gone for a couple of extended test drives. And you know what? It seems to be fixed. The car is back to how I remember it. It pulls really well. It even cold starts better. Yes, one bank will always fire before the other one because I only have one cold start injector. I'm still trying to look for another one. They're quite pricey when they ever come up, like $300 or something. But if I find one, I'll do that. I have tried the thing where some people say you don't need them, but it's pretty cold here. So, in the middle of summer, no, I don't need them. But in the spring and in the fall, I do need them because it takes a long time to start it without them. So I will try and find another one that works. I have a couple of them that leak, so I might try some things and just try and get those to work. But that's a different thing. But new tires are great, radio's great, everything else is working well. AC is nice and cold. Just that exhaust leak, but I'll sort that out later when the XJS is back, because I think I may need some of the manifolds from that car. Anyways, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.